Welcome to the TheA&P podcast. So this time around, it's just myself, Patrick, and my producer in the background, Doubting Thomas. As you can see, Alex is a bit under the weather at the moment, so I'm doing this one completely semi-solo, you could say, with Thomas in the background helping me with research and so on. Now, this is a case I wanted to cover. I was hesitant to report on this case until all the facts came in. And pretty much most of the facts are surrounding this case right now in County Kerry. Unfortunately, it's the same facts that always happens in Ireland. An unnamed suspect, a young lady is taken in the prime of her life, and not being named for legal reasons, and so on. And we all know what that is code for, unfortunately. And here we unfortunately have to report on another horrific crime in my country. The Gardaí have said a man they want to speak to in connection with the suspected murder of a woman in Kerry this week has fled the country, which other reporters have said all over the news. Apparently he left the residence after committing the horrific crime, got on a bus and flew out of Dublin back to his home country. They're the facts at the moment, as you can see. Now, what I cannot understand is if you're here under international protection, where do you have the resources to suddenly hop on a plane, fly back to Middle East? Where did that money and resources suddenly magically appear from? Time and time again, a lot of these guys seem to flee our country at the drop of a hat. Time and time again, we cannot mention their names. We cannot say what country they're from under law. And later on, I will show you a video from Derek Domino, who goes really well into the meat and potatoes of that law surrounding bypass and so on. He does a particularly good job on that. But this crime was unbelievable. This young lady is an American citizen who moved to Killarney to start a better life for herself and her daughter. And the fact that this individual was very close to her at the time, and they apparently were in a relationship of some sort. The reporting around it has been very, how can I put it, very carefully worded is the word I can say. Very hesitant to put a label on things, especially Irish reporting. Even when I come down here and I play a video here of our state broadcaster, you can see the hesitance of even stepping any legal landmines around the IPAS centres. And here we go.
Jamey Carney died following a violent assault between Monday night and the early hours of Tuesday morning. Detectives believe she was attacked and killed some time before her body was discovered. A post-mortem examination was completed last evening by the state pathologist Dr. Linda Mulligan. It's now thought a man who Gardaí have described as being of significant interest to their inquiries left County Kerry hours before the alarm was raised at lunchtime on Tuesday. He travelled to Dublin Airport and boarded a flight to the Middle East, where he is originally from. The man knew the victim and is believed to have information that could assist with the murder inquiry. The Garda National Immigration Bureau is building up a profile of the man and how he came to be in Ireland. It's believed he first arrived in the UK and spent some time there before travelling to Kerry. Meanwhile, Gardaí have reiterated an appeal to motorists with dash cam footage recorded on the Muckross Road in Killarney between 11 o'clock on last Monday night and 5 a.m. on Tuesday to share it with them. This 6-hour window will be key to the effort to determine the exact sequence of events that led to the murder. The crime scene remained sealed off for much of the day as investigating officers continued to gather evidence in relation to the killing.
Now, as you can see, all we know about the suspect is that he's a man and he's from the Middle East. That's it. Now, if this is any local individual who lived around or well, let's call it plainly, if he was an Irish citizen outside the iPass system, he'd be already have been named to be a picture of him all over RT News, all over the place. But unfortunately, we always know, especially as we all know, living in this country, that the minute we hear the suspect is a man, we already know that they're not Irish in a lot of cases. Unless they're under the age of 18, obviously, if they're an Irish citizen. But for the most part, we know the language. We've all seen it. I'm not the only YouTuber who points this out. Many YouTubers have pointed out the double standards in the legal system in Ireland. Not just for international protection, but surrounding certain individuals that have found their way to Ireland in the last number of years. But this particular case stood out to me that here we go is not the first case in the last number of days in Ireland. We already seen horrific attacks. We already seen the gentleman who was found guilty of the horrific attack in Dublin on the small kids. And time again, we all have to be told that we cannot blame the majority for the small act of the minority. Unfortunately, that is wearing very, very thin with an awful lot of us. Very much so. And as we can see in this article, this young lady really integrated from 2021 onwards. Herself and her daughter really integrated into the local community. Her own daughter is popular among the underage team and so on. Now, as we come down, meanwhile, the Killarney for Palestinian campaign group said that Miss Carney had supported a number of its events in the past, and there is no word significant to describe the impact of this horrific loss. The statement went on to state that the incidence of femicide in Ireland this year has already surpassed the total of all of 2025, which it has. It really has. Crime figures are up all across the country. Serious assaults are up, and so on. Crime against women are up, and so on across the last couple of years. Why is that? We all know the answer. Everyone knows the answer. Everyone's too scared to say the answer under our legal system. And that is why it's very important for people in Ireland to wake up and just realize what is going on. This is not normal for our country in a lot of cases. Crimes like this 10, 20 years ago were very, very, very rare. Very rare. But now it's headline after headline after headline. It says here, it is said that misogyny and violence against women were a scourge on society and need to be condemned in all its forms. Now, it's very interesting that misogyny and violence against women is a scourge on our society at the moment. Yes, we have had our dark pasts in Ireland. But in the last couple of years, we've become a more open society, in a lot of ways, a good way. But in a lot of ways, a bad way that we're leaving everyone in. There is a famous UK parliamentarian who said, if you invite the third world in, don't be surprised if you become the third world. And that's what we're slowly becoming. All we have to do is look at our neighbours over in the UK. Look at the probe into the rape gangs. This is where we are heading in a very, very rapid pace. And there is no other way of describing it. It is going to be more horrific headline after horrific headline after horrific headline. We have to look at Northern Ireland, where there was a gentleman attacked and nearly beheaded. That's not normal. That's not normal behaviour. Yes, we have had our dark past, but this is sinister. We can feel it when we walk down the streets of our own hometowns and villages. and it's worse it is getting. Now I'm going to cut over to Dirk Domino, who explains the law in a very, very precise and unique way. As always, he is very, he's very unique way, but very, very entertaining.
In recent days.
All right, so get a load of that. That's the state broadcaster. That's the state apparatus. Reporting on the murder, reporting on the terrible event that happened, but yet the man that they're looking for, the chief suspect, if you like, a man of significant interest to the police, what do we know about him from the state broadcast? Nothing. That he's a man and he lived here for a while. And you know why that is? That's because the state has managed to tie itself up in legalistic knots. Because, I'll tell you why, part of the legislation surrounding the IPAS system and the migration system and the asylum system, this man cannot be identified. Even though he's a chief suspect, if you want to call it that, person of significant interest and quite possibly a danger to other women. The state broadcaster and indeed the mainstream media are hamstrung by this legislation which says you cannot identify or cause to be identified as somebody who's in the IPAS system, somebody who has just applied for asylum or for protection. It's nothing to do with them getting it, just that they are applied and are in the system. They essentially, in law, cannot be have some kind of invisible shield, which you've seen in action there with RTE. That we can't tell you anything about him, can't show you his picture, we can't tell you his age, we can't tell you what he looks like, we can't tell you his name, we can't. Really?
He makes a very, very good point there. Now, he explained it in his very unique way, as always, with Dirk Domino. Absolutely fantastic. Really, really, really on the ball when it comes to the law around this. Now, we cannot, in Ireland, name him. We cannot do this. We cannot do that. As he said, they have a magic shield around their identity, no matter what crime they commit. Now, this really goes against, I would say, the foundation of our republic. As you can hear my voice, I'm really trying to hold my P's and Q's in check around this. This is unbelievable. Me personally, in the United States, where Alex is from, they're used to a certain level of narration around crimes. They still find this abhorrent to their legal system or their belief in their legal system. But this crime is one of many that have happened in the space of less than 7 days in Ireland. And not just the crimes, but also the convictions of crimes in Ireland. And it makes me want to ask, I've watched Unbroken Man, I've watched a lot of other YouTubers around this invasion into my country. And there's only way you can call it. Yes, a lot of people are genuinely fleeing war. We all, our hearts go out to these genuine cases. But the vast majority of them come from safe countries. Are they good countries? No, but they're genuinely safe countries. Now, we have opened ourselves up to the new migration pact in Ireland in recent weeks, where not only are we going to have more of an influx, we're going to be fined if we don't take more by the EU, which I find is a really kick in the teeth to not just us living in Ireland, but Ireland in general. I've seen other countries in the EU who've turned around and just said, no, all we have to do is look at Poland. They just take the fines and say, we've had enough. But no, we cannot do that in Ireland. We always have to be the best boys in class around the world, to the detriment of our own nation. I know normally I'm usually the laugher in the corner when it comes to these podcasts. I'm usually the jolly guy from Ireland. But this case, not just this case, but many cases in the last few days have just knocked the sense of humour out of me in a lot of ways. It's a shame that in Ireland we cannot clear an image of the suspect in any shape, form, or fashion. But unfortunately, sometimes when you go through the internet, these things pop up. He mightn't be the suspect, or he could be the suspect. I do not know. Do not take my word for it. All you have to do is look at Google or look at other outlets across the world who seem to have no problem showing this image. Unfortunately, in Ireland, our state broadcasters and so on, and other publications have been hamstrung by the law. But if this suspect or this person looks familiar to you, do report it to the local Gardaí. As I say, I just accidentally found this image by a simple Google search, which only took me less than 2 minutes. And my producer, Davin Thomas, is in the corner underlining that the internet is a free and open place, apparently. He was just highlighting that in big writing underneath. He even put a face on. Okay, I get his point. Yeah, the internet is a free and open place. Now, we always have to end these episodes in a positive note. Will Interpol and the Gardaí in general have a good track record, and will give them credit where credit is due for finding suspects once they do leave our borders? They mightn't find them straight away, but they have a pretty good track record of tracking them down. And but in this case, where he has fled in the Middle East, is a complete mess. And it's a very, very difficult place to find an individual if they disappear into these regions. I hope for this lady's family, they definitely do bring this man to justice. Unfortunately, in Ireland, we are really tired of these cases popping up more and more, especially in the last couple of weeks. As I was mentioning earlier, the man has been found guilty of that crime in Dublin and Parnell Square, where those kids were attacked. It was a horrific, unprecedented attack in Ireland at the time. And I remember the reporting around it was similar to the reporting around this crime in County Kerry, where the suspect can be named, his nationality can be identified, and so on, for legal reasons. Now, the sad thing is, we're all getting really tired. I know legally they cannot do this, but maybe it's time to change the law in Ireland around the IPAS centres, or revisit the laws, I should say. Because changing the laws in Ireland seem to be impossible, and it suits a certain narrative of the present government. But hopefully, with enough pressure and enough people getting together and getting onto their local TDs and saying these laws do not make sense. Why should these murderers be held and protected where Irish citizens do not have the same protections as Derek Domino said? We don't have shields around us if we commit these crimes. And it should not be the same for these individuals who arrive in our country. If they commit a crime, they break the law, they should be named and shamed the same as every other citizen in this country. And that's my final word on this. Now, I know this is not our normal way we do the podcast, but I will hope that you do take the time to like and share our podcast across all multiple platforms. It is absolutely fantastic to do this project with Alex normally. It is definitely something that we've been talking about long before we actually did it. We talked about it for a long time. Now I hope that you do not share any images of the suspect in the previous case anywhere on any social media until he is brought to justice, as it is highly illegal to share the name of the suspect, especially, or the country his blowing off to you in any shape, form, or fashion, especially under our laws at this particular time. But as they say, if you do have any information around this case, do, as always, contact the local Gardaí. This is myself, Patrick, signing off, and I will see you the next time.